Part 7. Echoes of the Forgotten, The Weight of Ascent and the Inherited Quest. Chapter 1. The Silent History Beneath the Flow. As Alara's path tilted ever steeper, ascending beyond the clear-cut vitality of the lowlands, the mountain began to reveal its true solemn character. She was no longer walking in a realm of dynamic flow, but, entering the monumental archive of memory, the air felt heavy, not with mist, but with the immense, unseen pressure of time itself. A silent history lies beneath the flow, a deep, non-auditory resonance of past events buried beneath the present moment's surface. This history was composed of the whispered stories of a time long lost, tales of human frailty and sublime ambition that never reached the history books of the sheltered valley. These stories, known only to the deepest, most patient forces of the peak, constituted the secrets buried where the tall trees grow, secrets known only to the most ancient roots and the immovable lichen-covered stone. The mountain was the perfect accountant, maintaining the final tally of the painful cost, a ledger measured in lost lives and then shattered dreams, the irreversible currency of challenging the sublime indifference of the alpine world. The transition in the accompanying internal score was stark shifting from the kinetic urgency of the banjo to the ethereal stillness of deep space. The synth pad holds a note both far and high, a tone so utterly removed from the physical, tactile world that it sounded disembodied and infinite. It was a sound like wind across an empty stage, conveying immense scale and utter solitude, emphasizing the smallness of a single human life against the backdrop of geological time. This high, sustained, and desolate note represented the echoes of the centuries gone by, all the unrecorded lives, all the silent, unfulfilled aspirations of the seekers who came before her. These memories were not destroyed. They were merely trapped deep inside an unread ancient page, the geological, crystalline record of the mountain itself, waiting patiently for a sensitive soul like Alara to interpret their silent, unwritten script. The synth pad was the sound of the mountain's vast indifferent consciousness. Chapter 2. The Fragile Sound of Sacrifice and the Sacred Vice. The emotional core of this high-altitude realm was one of profound yet noble sorrow. This emotion was channeled through a single, acutely lonely instrument. The lonely oboe sings a fragile sound, its reedy, sorrowful, almost human timbre, cutting through the synth pad's emptiness with piercing clarity. This was a sound of immense grief, but also of fierce nobility, a melody that tells of sacrifice. It spoke directly of those who climbed and never were found, the explorers, the mystics, the desperate, whose physical forms were subsumed by the mountain, leaving behind only this pure, resonant echo of their final, brave effort. The oboe served as the mountain's official lament. The oboe's pervasive cry was the sound of the cost exacted in this sacred vice. The mountain was a sacred vice, an irresistible demanding obsession that promised the ultimate reward of truth and transcendence, but frequently exacted the ultimate price of oblivion. This realization was the heaviest truth for Alara. She was not merely adventuring. She was participating in a perpetual, high-stakes spiritual exchange with a consuming force. The mountain demanded total dedication, and its only reward was the truth of the self, often revealed only in the moment of failure. As she traversed a particularly challenging stretch of exposed, wind-scoured trail, Alara feels the pull of those before. This was not an abstract thought. It was a genuine psychic weight, an awareness of the multitude of human footsteps that had faltered precisely where her own now struggled to gain purchase. She felt the heavy, driving aspiration of the ones whose hope had led them to this peak, a hope powerful enough to propel them upward through unimaginable hardship, but ultimately insufficient to save them from the final reckoning. They knocked upon the far-off silent door of the summit's absolute truth, but they did not gain entry. In their final moments they realized that the ultimate answer was beyond words, beyond language, beyond the grasp of the verbal self. They found the words they needed not to speak. Their profound silence was their final, purest, most resonant lesson to the living. Chapter 3. The Heavy Burden of the Silent Crowd. The oboe's sorrowful note did not simply vanish, but was layered over by a new, more expansive and unsettling texture. The choir pad suggests a silent crowd, an immense invisible congregation of the departed seekers. This was not a physical gathering, but an energetic field, a collection of unspent wills and latent intentions, invisible, but always standing near. Their silent presence was an almost claustrophobic reality, surrounding Alara like a cool, heavy cloud of perpetual witnesses. This Squire Pat captured the immense collective emotional spectrum left behind by their inability to succeed. Their failures hang within a hazy cloud, the collective unresolved regret, the sadness of unfinished purpose, the agony of nearly grasping the goal. Yet the mountain was a brutal equalizer, and even their moments of intense personal glory were brutally ephemeral, their triumphs banished by a silent tear. On the eternal scale of the mountain, their most Herculean achievements were fleeting, instantly forgotten, remembered only by the indifferent wind and the cold stone, reducing their grand, human stories to mere whispers of sorrowful irony. Alara's ascent became slower, each step heavier, weighted not by mere physical fatigue, but by the immense gravity of this accumulated history. She walks a path that others tried to climb, realizing with profound clarity that she was not just carrying her own singular ambition, but carrying burdens that were not her own. This was the high-altitude inheritance of the mountain, the failures, the unspoken dreams, the unfulfilled destinies of all who had preceded her. She felt the chilling truth of the heavy weight of unrelenting time, the truth that her own brief life was just another fragile segment in this eternal, unforgiving drama. She was walking directly through the seeds of sorrow that had been long sown by the mountain's relentless demand for ultimate total dedication. This burden was her involuntary final initiation. Chapter 4. Transcending the Ghosts for the Final Lesson. The recognition of this immense collective weight brought with it a stern, non-negotiable instruction. Alara understood that, to succeed where others failed, she could not merely follow the path of their tragedy, she had to transcend it. She must surpass the ghosts that hold the way. These ghosts were not literal, malevolent spirits, but the powerful spiritual embodiments of fear, doubt, insufficient resolve, and the emotional exhaustion that had caused her predecessors to turn back or collapse. They were the self-imposed spiritual obstacles formed from the failures of others, preventing the next seeker from progressing past the point of collective despair. Her true ultimate goal was no longer the physical peak. It was to find the answers that they could not reach. These answers were the culmination of the entire journey, the ultimate self-sovereign truth of selfhood and purpose that lay behind the silent door of the summit. Experience. To achieve this, she had to execute a final act of spiritual cleansing. She needed to clear the dust of every fading day, stripping away the accumulated grief, failure, and regret of her predecessors, so that the path ahead was pristine and pure. Only then could she finally to learn the final lesson they must teach. The lesson was stark, profound, and simple. The mountain demanded everything, the totality of the self, free from all attachment, and the only way to gain the peak was to carry not their sorrow, but the fierce, purified, absolute essence of their unfulfilled desire. The choir pad and the oboe began their slow, deliberate, and final fade, receding into the high atmosphere. Alara had successfully absorbed their lesson and integrated their sacrifice into the immutable core of her own will. The ambient sound was replaced by a profound, utter silence, a silence that was not empty, but full of a new, purified, and terrifying intent. She moved upward now, carrying the combined, quiet strength of the forgotten, her own burden feeling both lighter and infinitely heavier, as she prepared to make the final, sovereign push.